Good afternoon. There are not many things I could tell the people in this room that they don't already know about Coach Henzes and the characteristics he has instilled in his players that we carry on with us in everyday life. But there are a couple stories I'd like to share that happened during the 2007 state playoff run. It was Thanksgiving Day practice, and Coach Ennis was teaching how the strong safety needs to come up and make a tackle. Coach has demonstrated multiple techniques in the past by explaining the technique as he walked through it. In this case, it was much different. Coach Henzes turned his hat backwards, the Blakely Bears hat, blue and yellow. He turned his hat backwards and came up full speed, tackling Pat Hart to the ground. The players and the other coaches were all surprised and excited when Coach did that. It was definitely a great way to set the tone for the rest of practice. Coach McHale, I would recommend you don't try this with the Bucks this year. You may hurt yourself. On Friday nights, football came first for Coach Henzes. On Saturday mornings, driver's ed came first. Coach would have a full schedule of driver's ed training students on Saturdays and Sundays. I remember Saturday mornings, usually the day after the games, a bunch of players and me would be in the training room getting treatment or working out the soreness from last night's game. Coach Henzes would come into the training room, scan the room, and seek out the players who he had in driver training. Then he would ask if they wanted to go driving with him right now. It was the last thing any of us players wanted to do, but there was no way we could say no to Coach Henzes. For all the football stories, memories, wins, and moments with Coach Henzes, the most lasting impression I will always have about Coach Henzes is that he's a great person. For how great of a football coach he was always and always a better person. Coach Henzes cares about his players more off the field than he does on the field. Coach invests his own personal time to stay involved in players' lives even after they left his high school program. When I lived in Denver and Philadelphia, Roseanne and Coach would send holiday cards with handwritten notes with them. When I got married last weekend, Coach Ennis was the first person in the church. And yes, that was confirmed by Father Sika. Since I started the Bucks program in 2005, Coach Ennis has been a constant presence in my life. And I know without a doubt he will continue to be. Coach Ennis is more than a football coach. He is a life coach who has instilled qualities in me, as well as other players, not only to be successful in life, but to also be a great person and to leave this world a better place than it is today. Thank you, and I love you, Coach.
The 53 years Coach Henzes has put in as a teacher and a coach. What makes him most proud is when he hears that a former student or player has achieved success. With us this evening is NFL coach Joey Marciano. Coach always stressed the importance of never giving up on a dream. Joe was very, very close friends with Mr. McDonald, our superintendent. And he used to tell people when he was in high school that he was going to be an NFL coach. And when you look at the road that he had to travel, it's very rare that somebody could stay on that road. Started out going from Strasburg as a graduate assistant, and I believe he went up to New Hampshire. Then he went out to Penn State as a graduate assistant. No pay. They give you some room and board, probably work a summer camp. Then he finally gets his first paying job down at Temple University. When he goes to Temple, at the end of the year, the coach retires, new coach comes in, Bruce Arians, he's out of a job. So he goes over to Villanova, gets hired by Villanova. At the end of the year, they drop football. He's out of a job. Goes over to Philadelphia Stars, asks them to take a look at it for 2 weeks. If they like him, hire him. And after 2 weeks, they not only liked him, but eventually that led to Victor coming from a graduate assistant program in North Carolina and getting hooked up with Jim Moore, and the rest is history. But there were others. There was Tony Marciano, their brother, who also coached in the NFL. There was Paul Richards, an astronaut, who flew the Space Shuttle Discovery. There are countless others who have been influenced or motivated by Coach Henzes. There was lawyers and doctors. There was people who went directly into the workforce or the armed forces. But the one thing all these kids had in common was they were always given direction. And that direction came from Coach Henzes. But there was others that was able to kind of, I'm not going to say he conned them, but it kind of worked out for him. First of all the lunch ladies wore shirts that said Dunmore football. Nobody ever wore a shirt that said Dunmore basketball, because we were never given a shirt that said Dunmore basketball. He said to my son, he said, "Son, Jack, taking your driver's test today?" "Yes, I am, Coach." "What time are you scheduled for?" 11 o'clock. "Okay, I'll pick you up at 11:30. Picks them up at 11:30. They go up to the driving center. They walked in. My son said, "Dad, it was packed. Packed." He's thinking, I'm going to be up here all day. And he looked around, and none of the workers at the driver's center had shirts that said PennDOT, Pennsylvania Department of Transportation. Everybody working at the driver's center had a shirt that said Dunmore football. Well, they gave Coach the wave. And my kid was out of there in 5 minutes. Well, I think we have our first student who made the honor roll coming up here. Colin Holmes was a 4-year starter in the Dunmore High School football program from 2013 to 2016. As a running back, he was named to the All-Regional and Pennsylvania All-State teams. Currently, he is a junior studying at Westchester University with an eventual goal of becoming a physical therapist. Most important part that he thinks Coach would be proud of is the fact that he made the Dean's List. So let's bring up Colin Holmes.
A good coach can change a game, but a legendary coach that's an icon for an entire community can change many lives. Coach Henzes has changed every single one of you guys' lives in some way, shape, or form. I know from my experience with my teammates and I, we learned many valuable life lessons. And there are 2 particular life lessons we learned one day, but it was for the wrong reason. So it was my junior year, 2015. So before the season starts, we get a pair of shorts from the Friends of the Bucks, and they're pretty expensive. And Coach makes it very, very clear that we are to wear those shorts to practice before a football game. So fast forward to the week of Susquehanna. We're playing them up there, so we're playing them on a Saturday, so we're shorts and shoulder pads on a Friday. We better wear those shorts. Well, for some reason, I guess we didn't want to wear those shorts that day. And we probably thought, Coach won't notice. Well, he did. So we're getting ready to go at practice, and right before we're ready to go, Coach has a disgusted look on his face. He's tapping his leg. I didn't know what it was. I thought someone went to the bathroom, didn't flush a toilet. So he addressed the team about the shorts, and he said he was going to go one by one to each player and see if they had the shorts on. So how the field house is set up, I'm coach. There's a bunch of people here, bunch of people here, bunch of people here, and then a bunch of people right here. People who sit here usually go sit on the floor. So he goes to each player and goes, "You go home, you go home, you stay, you go home, you go home, you go home, you stay, you go home, you go home, you go home, 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 home." We ended up with 10 guys practicing that day. We were not mentally prepared to practice that day. So what did we learn from that experience right there? Well, number 1, mental preparation. We got to be mentally prepared to have our equipment on. If we're given instructions to put those shorts on, we better wear them. Number 2, don't bite the hand that feeds you. He says that a lot, and I didn't know what it meant until that experience. What that means is, if someone's nice enough to give you a pair of shorts, you better wear them, you better go out and support that person. Coach wanted his players to be prepared for life after football. Not just football, he wanted us to be good football players, but he wanted us to be better people. And that's something that will stick with me forever. And everything you've done for this community, Dunmore High School, Dunmore football program, this entire family here today is unbelievable and very unique. Thank you for everything you've done, Coach. We love you, and go Bucks.
One of my first coaching jobs was at Scranton Prep, where I was the assistant varsity basketball coach. And I remember the game very clearly. We got called for 3 violations for screening in the lane. And I called timeout. And I said, how many times I gotta tell you, don't send no pics in the lane? And this kid from Prep said, Coach, that's a double negative. I said, it's a what? I said, it's a double negative. You use 2 negatives in the same sentence, which actually makes it a positive, which means you want us to send pics in the lane. So you gotta be kidding me. You're out of the game. You sit right next to me. You hear me say anything grammatically incorrect, correct me immediately. You understand, son? Then I got hired at Dunmore. I'm dropping double negatives all over the place and nobody knows what's going on. We were never in the double negatives in Dunmore. Never affected us at all. But you know, when I did get hired in Dunmore, little did I know at the time there was a man waiting on the other side of those doors who was going to become an important part of my life. It shouldn't have happened. He was a football coach. I was a basketball coach. He was a veteran. I was just starting out. He was married. He had a family. I couldn't even get a date. Then to top it off, I found out he doesn't even drink. Where in God's name is this relationship going? So I resisted him. And what wasn't in my plans evolved a lifelong friendship. Jack Henzes offered to me some qualities that are hard to find these days. Displaying a true sense of loyalty to Dunmore, his players, his coaches, and most importantly, his family. He found it easy to have faith in people. Whether it was his players or his coaches, he believed in the quality of their best work. He never walked into a classroom where he was unprepared. He never put a team on the field that was unprepared. And his ego was never too big to give credit where credit was due and take the heat for those who might have erred. When college coaches came in, he told them where to go. He gave them the names of all players in northeastern Pennsylvania. When a college coach walked in, all they had to do was go up to guidance, and every transcript was waiting for them. As Coach McHale said earlier, if somebody was struggling financially, he checked their lunch accounts, put $25, $50. He made sure his kids did some type of community service. I saw the demand he put on players, the love he had for his family, the love he had for his grandkids. We could sit and just talk, and it always went back to our families. His father and mother, my father and mother, and how much they meant to us. But most importantly, his philosophy never changed. He wanted his students and athletes to be good citizens and give back to the community. This afternoon, we remember Coach Henzes' prominent impact on one's life I can only be grateful, Coach, that I was one of them that you had an impact on, and the chance to say publicly, thank you. With that, it's my pleasure to introduce a man who played a special role in Coach's life. Paul Marranca not only played for Coach Henzes at Wyoming area, but joined him at Dunmore High School as an assistant football coach and science teacher after graduating from Bucknell University. From 1976 to 2008, he served as a head football coach at Wyoming area. 11 times he was selected as the Wyoming Valley Coach of the Year. 10 times he led the Warriors to a conference championship while also winning 3 district championships. In 1980, he was named the Pennsylvania Coach of the Year, and in 2010 was inducted into the Pennsylvania Coaches Hall of Fame. Would you please welcome Coach Paul Marranca?
Thank you very much. Jack, no zingers? No zingers?
I don't know you that well.
Well, after I say a couple of things, you may have a couple.
Wyoming Valley, I heard you guys used to carry.
I'm still licensed. Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be here honoring Coach Henzes for his achievement as in the coaching profession in his 47 years at Dunmore High School. And that will forever be his legacy. We heard from 6 young men who had played for Coach and represents the decades 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000, 2010s to the present. You have heard their stories about the Bucks and Coach Henzes and what it meant to them. Over 50 plus years of coaching, he has preached the same lesson. And that was the lesson his dad said. And Papa Bear said, taught him how to live the game of life, to live life right, and to keep priorities with God and family. And that message has never varied. And I stand here before you today as a disciple of that philosophy. As we talk about Coach Henzes' achievements, his place in football history will always be there. In the beginning, I played for Coach Henzes. His first year at Wyoming area as the head coach. Do you believe in fate? Do you believe in the 6 degrees of separation? Well, let me tell you the story. And this story begins in 1964. I was a sophomore at West Pittston High School on the football team. We had a very good team, 9-1. We were fighting for the Eastern Conference Championship. We lost to Scranton Tech, which had a good football team also. But it all came down to one last game. West Scranton was playing Blakely High School in the 10th game of the season. We needed West Scranton to tie the game or win the game so we can get in as the conference champs. Well, as the game goes on, it's in the 4th quarter, 0-0, and all of a sudden West Scranton has to punt the ball to Blakely. Good kick, running back by the name of Gary Ruby, and you may remember that name. He was the GM at the Phillies organization, Red Barons. And he took the ball to the 12-yard line and went 88 yards for the score. Naturally, it sunk West Pittston's hope. Blakely went into the championship and eventually won the game against Cole Township. Well, the key point in that, the special teams coach was Jack Henzes Jr. And that was my first knowledge of who Coach was and our first, in a sense, connection. Later on, a couple years later, West Pittston High School, Wyoming, Exeter, and West Wyoming High Schools all merged to form Wyoming Area School District. Well, the first head coach, Coach Henzes. I was a senior that year, and we had our first team meeting. He comes in with Phil Angeli, who was his line coach at the time, and came in and started running spring sessions. Now, what did that mean? Well, we did weight training, we did isometrics, we did stance and starts, we did pulling. We were doing all kinds of things in the gym. We never did that before. We had no idea what was going on. The first day of August, or the first practice in August that year, Wyoming area goes on the field with 98 players. We were practicing 3 a days. By Wednesday of that first week, We were down to 48 players. Talk about culture shock. On Saturday of that first week, we go for a scrimmage. And Coach always says, you know, you play the best, you go against the best. Oh yeah, what do we know? I mean, we're just happy to be alive. Well, we drive up to Blakely High School, where Papa Bear is coaching the Blakely Bears. We go scrimmage. Wasn't much of a scrimmage. Blakely Bears kicked the daylights out of us. It was an old-fashioned beating. In fact, I still have flashbacks from that day. And I had a flashback tonight when Mike Magnet walked in, because Mike Magnet, Ernie Weston, Jack Berger, I still see them. They beat the crap out of us. We get in the bus, we go home, long bus ride home. We go right past the high school and drive right to the stadium. We're looking at each other. We practiced for 2 hours after that. Well, you talk about being in culture shock, that was it. Ironically, our first game of the year was with the Dunmore Bucks. And Dunmore beat us, 27-13. And we kind of struggled in the beginning. We lost 3 of our first 4 games. But I have to admit, from the beginning to the end, we grew as a team. And we got better and we got better. And Coach was always preaching, stay with the course, we'll get better. The last game of the year, we played 44 area, which is now a component of Valley West, on Thanksgiving Day before 12,000 people. And it was a great game. And in fact, we upset them 21-13, which became the first signature win for Wyoming area and for Coach. Little do people know, we went 7-4. The next 3 years, Coach went 24-8. Talk about establishing a program. But as things would happen, and I'm sure a lot of people here don't know the story, Coach was not rehired at the start of the 1970 season. His last year was 9-2. Coach did not get rehired. And the reason for it, one of the assistant coaches had a different political philosophy than one of the prominent school board members. And they wanted Coach to fire that assistant coach, and Coach wouldn't do it. And this is something that I remember back then, loyalty to your staff and loyalty to your people. And Coach was fired, in a sense, not rehired. But as one door closes, another door opens. 1971, Coach is brought in to be the head coach at Dunmore High School here. Coach Lou Costanza retired, and Coach got the job. Now, let me spring forward a little bit into July of 1971. I had graduated Bucknell and went to University of West Virginia to start my graduate program. And it's in the middle of July, and I get a phone call. It's Coach Henzes. Now, I'm thinking, how the hell did he track me down? I'm in West Virginia. No, he did. And he says to me, hey, I want you to come and coach with me at Dunmore. I said, oh, okay. I said, and I even have a job for you teaching science. Oh, that's even better, because I really had no idea what I was going to do. I said, okay, give me a week to clean up my act here in West Virginia. I finished up classes, got back to Northeast Pennsylvania, and we had a coach called his first staff meeting the first week in August. Well, I walk into the school, and I see Coach. I said, hey, Coach, where's the rest of the staff? And he says to me, it's you and I. I said, oh. You handle the offensive line, I'll take the quarterbacks and backs and receivers. You handle the defensive line, I'll take the defensive back and backers. You take care of the training room, I'll take care of the equipment. Okay, that was it. There we were, the two of us starting the season. Now, fortunately, I had Papa Bear hanging around, and Papa Bear took me under his wing, and after every practice session, after every break, he would come over to me and he'd help me, with things. And I tell you what, he brought my coaching from bottom of the heap to higher every day. He made me a much better coach. He was like a doting grandfather to me. Later on, that same season, Bill Straka, who is sitting right here, came on and became part of our staff. And Bill handled the freshman program, and Jack and I still handled the varsity. We had a good year. We ended up, I think, 7-3-1 that year, and that was the beginning, the foundation. As commander-in-chief of any program, and especially Dunmore Bucks, Coach Henzes was demanding, intense, and sometimes a little scary. I think many of the kids that have played for them will realize that, it's tough sometimes asking coach or going to coach, because you just don't know what he's going to do. He was intense. Well, at the end of the season, we were rewarded by being able to go to a clinic. And we went to a clinic in Allentown, the coaching staff, Bill, myself, and Coach. And Coach was very tough at clinics too. He said, you make sure you're on time, et cetera, et cetera. So after the Friday night clinic, we decided to go out and have dinner, and we get Coach to lighten up a little bit. And during that, usually during dinner, we'll get him to drink one whiskey sour. So he drank the one whiskey sour, and we talked and we went over everything, and Coach, after it was over, decided he's ready for bed because we have a 7 o'clock breakfast the next morning. So he goes to bed, and naturally Bill and I, we want to talk more about X's and O's, and we decided to visit the club or the bar in the Allentown Hotel where we stayed, and we talked until 2 o'clock in the morning. The bars closed, and we were there. So we were coming back to the room, and I'm sure it was Billy that said this. We all stayed in the same hotel room, so things were tough then. Money was tight with Dunmore, in spite of all the stuff they had, John. Billy said, Coach's bed has a vibrator in it. He said, let's put a quarter in it. I said, oh no, Billy, you don't want to do this. Billy said, oh yeah, twisted my arm. So we get into the room, we get changed, and we're getting into bed, and all of a sudden, reach over, put the quarter into bed, and the bed starts vibrating. It's all dark, and we're in there trying to not say a word. We're laughing. Coach sits up, bed's vibrating. He's looking around. Stopped vibrating after about a minute. He laid back down and went to sleep. Okay. Next morning, we're at breakfast, and didn't say a word. Not a word. Didn't say anything. And Billy and I are looking at each other and said, ooh, this is not good. So anyhow, that was it. Until later on. Coach does have a sense of humor. It was about a year later. He's giving scouting assignments. And he's saying, here, Coach, you go here. Coach Del Rosso, you go see prep play. You go. He says, Strzok and Marranca, you're going to Erie. The Sisters of the Poor are playing out there. We'll see you in about 3 days. Payback is tough. After the '95 season, I left to become the head coach at Wyoming area. Someone asked me, what lessons did you take? And you know what? There were so many things that I've learned from Coach Henzes and coaching at Dunmore High School that I jotted down a couple, and there's just too many to list, but I want to go through a couple. One, the thing about Dunmore High School, Coach taught fundamentals. And Dunmore has always been, as I've seen in a lot of teams across the state, probably the most fundamental and sound team I have ever seen. Technique and understanding of the game, that he has taken usually average kids and make them play above their heads. And that goes back to just that start, fundamental sound. Here, do what you have to do. Take care of the little things. The big things will take care of themselves. And a good example of that, and I saw him here today, was Gene DeVizio. Gene DeVizio was a 4-year starter for us as a linebacker. And I remember talking to a Division I college coach that had come in to do some scouting, and he saw film on Gene DeVizio. And you looked at him, Gene had the best technique probably of any linebacker I have ever seen. He knew his keys, he knew where to go, et cetera, et cetera. And this coach was so impressed. Then we brought Gene in, the coach was amazed. Gene is 5'10", 180 pounds. He just couldn't believe that what translated on the field was done by a kid who was not really very big. And that goes back to what I said. Coach takes average kids and make them play better. The second thing Coach gave to me, established discipline. And we talked to, some of the guys here talked about discipline, about what happens. And probably the best example of that, I'm going to bring up a famous person. He said, be fair and be consistent. And that's what I remember. And again, the same thing with the uniforms, not having the shorts. Be consistent and your kids will fall in line. Well, the first year at Dunmore High School, Coach established a closed lunch period so that when we had practice, we had lunch. Don't leave campus. We want to go back on the field. We were practicing 3 times a day, so we wanted to make sure all the kids are there. We were afraid if they left, they'd never come back. So during the first week of practice, 2 of our seniors, and they were the 2 leaders. One is sitting here right here today, Joe Marciano, and the other was Malcolm Xenophon. They decide they're going to take a little lunch break and go up to Mike's Sandwich Shop and have lunch, and then came back about 2 hours later, and they got caught. So Coach didn't say anything until Saturday. Saturday we're scrimmaging Pittston area, I think it was, and it came time to get dressed, and the coach said, Marciano, Xenophon, you're not dressing. And the faces went down, and all the kids around, they looked. The lesson was taught. You missed something that was a team practice, or you missed something that the team was doing. You're not individuals. And just like the shorts, once it happens once, it'll never happen again. And still to this day, that first scrimmage, we played without 2 good players, but we never had a problem after that. The third thing Coach always said, establish work ethic. Value of weight training, summer program, conditioning, special teams. We did all that stuff in the summer. And the assistant coaches had a lot of input into doing all that, and he gave them the opportunity to try new things. Fourth, he said, develop attitude, personality. Dunmore had a personality. The kids in Dunmore were tough kids. Anytime you played a Dunmore team, you knew you were going to get your head beat in. You may win the game, but you're going to get in for a fight, and Dunmore kids always carried that personality and that chip on their shoulder. I had a kid in 1973 that, as a lineman, good kid, nice kid. He was a pain in the neck a little bit, but he said to me, he said, Coach, I think I can start. And he was a sophomore. And he was about 5'3". They listed him at 5'7", about 190 pounds. And I call it, I still use it to this day when I was talking about Coach, I call it the Sandone effect. Mike Sandone, if you remember, played in 73, 74, 75. And a tough kid, about 190 pounds, a weightlifter, but he had a tenacious attitude. And Mike, and he wasn't the starter. And I had somebody else ahead of him, and he said, Coach, I think I can be the starter. I can do this. Give me a chance. And I said, okay. So he started in a scrimmage, and sure enough, the son of a gun did a great job. And then the next scrimmage, he did a better job, and played for 3 years at right tackle. 5'7", 5'3", 190 pounds. And it taught me a lesson as a coach. Don't prejudge somebody by size. And as a result of that, we have played many kids at Dunmore, and I've played them at Wyoming area, that if you look at them size-wise, what are you doing on the field? Shouldn't be there. Bill Butler was one of them. Al Cibio, when he played as a nose guard. I mean, we had kids that, they looked like little kids, but they had hearts of gold. They were tenacious. So never judge the size of the dog in the fight. Remember that. It's the fight in the dog. The last thing, Coach, or one of the last things, is establishing leadership, camaraderie, and teamwork. All of that comes from commitment. Are you willing to make 100% commitment? And I'm going to upset some people here in the room, especially Coach Cianci I see over there, and Coach. The basketball people wonder why they have the shirts, why we had the shirts and they didn't, et cetera, et cetera. I make it this. I have often said this. Football is a life sport, whereas basketball, baseball, track, volleyball, tennis, etc., they're recreational sports. The difference is in football, in every play, there's a battle, there's a fight, there's a war in which you may win or lose, you may get hurt or hurt somebody else. Sometimes you fight and sometimes you flight. That develops a toughness that you don't get in any other sport. When things get really tough in your job, and when it gets tough in business, and you get tough in daily lives, you fall back on those things that you learned on the football field. When you got knocked down, did you get back up? Did you tuck your tail between your legs and, whimper home? Or did you fight back? Dunmore kids have always fought back. They were always tough kids. I can't say I've ever been on the tee at Scranton Country Club, teeing off on the first tee, and never got any of those lessons, or whether I was on the basketball court or the tennis court. I have to say, I never feared for my life or getting beat up. I never feared about any. On the field, though, you worried about that. And that's why I really refer to it as a life sport. And one of the kids that sticks in my mind to that is a kid by the name of Lou Scaringi. And I don't know, I haven't seen Lou since the 70s. Lou was a junkyard dog. Simple as it was. Tough, short, not a real great athlete, but boy, he was tenacious. He was tenacious. And we were playing, I think it was Valley View. He was on the field, and naturally I took care of injuries, and I see him laying on the field, and I go on the field, and Lou says, Coach, my shoulder. And I stick my hand in, I can't find anything in there. I said, ooh, this is not good. I waved to Dr. Caesar, who was our team doctor at the time, and Joe's here tonight. And Joe comes on the field, he looks in and starts, he said, yeah, he says it's dislocated. And all Scaringi is yelling at me is, I'm not coming out of the game. I'm not coming out of the game. Joe says to him, hold him. And he took his arm and did whatever docs do, and it went back. He screamed, it went back in. 4 weeks later, Lou Scaringi played in our championship game. And I think that's something that talks about not letting your teammates down, the toughness again. And I think those Dunmore kids always had that toughness in that fight. The sixth thing he taught me was hiring. And this is whether you're talking about coaches, and I'm talking about the young coaches that are here, or you're hiring people in business. Hire for loyalty. You can teach the X's and O's, or you can teach the business, but you can never teach loyalty. And I have to say I took that to heart. And Jack, I'm going to change. You were a little wrong in one of the things you talked about, Coach Marciano. I gave Coach Marciano his first job at Wyoming area in 1971. His first paying job. So you missed that one. But I also had Coach Dolan. I had my cousin Tony Marranca. I've had people that played for me. And as coach has, how many kids that played for him went on to coach and be coaches all across northeastern Pennsylvania. And that's important, because I think you want to hire somebody that has been through the program, that understands the discipline and understands what it takes to be a winner. And lastly, he gave to me, be patient. I was always one that wanted to speed things along, a little bit more. Coach says, be patient. It's almost like saying walk softly but carry the big stick. But I learned, he said, all of the things we talk about will take time to put in. In that Wyoming area, the first year I was 1-9. 3 years later, we were 12-0. So it's important to take those lessons. Over the next 12 years, Coach Henzes and I have been always in contact. I left Wyoming area. I left Dunmore in 1975, was that Wyoming area. Next 12 years, we talked, we conversed, we shared ideas. We did everything we could each week except trade players, because it would have been very easy to put a Wyoming area player in a Dunmore uniform and a Dunmore player in a Wyoming area uniform. You would never know the difference. But what happened during that 12 years is that the bond between teacher and student grew tighter. And still to this day, you know, Coach has been like a second father to me. In 1988, I was fortunate enough to come back to Dunmore High School. I had taken a sabbatical for the birth of my son, and my job wasn't there when I came back, so Coach said, come on back to Dunmore. I always felt at home at Dunmore. When Coach says, you know, once a buck, always a buck, listen, that works. In 1988, I came back, and as we know, 1989 was the championship year. Magical year. 29 kids strong, having a blend of size, speed, intelligence, all of which Coach molded into a team that could beat anybody in the state. And if you remember, that only loss that year was to Berwick, who went on to the state finals, but we had a touchdown called back in a 6-0 loss. I still remember that. So as we reflect back on all the teams from 1966 to 2018 that Coach Henzes influenced, he demanded that they always be gentlemen, respect authority, be good teammates, and always give 100%. And that's stuff that you should do in everyday life. I've summed it up by saying, live life like you played a game, with passion and intensity. I would be remiss in not mentioning this right now because I know she's going to kill me, but Roseanne Henzes, unbelievable. And when I refer to her, and the coach has always been the coach, etc., but Roseanne is the general manager. She's the GM. And I could tell you, I think she's had input into some of our game plans, too. So, Roseanne, thank you for all you've done. You were wonderful. And what great meals. I used to love going to Coach's house before games. And let me just tell one quick story about Roseanne being the GM. We were there before the game, and it's a big game, too. I still remember. About 4:30, we just got done having dinner. And naturally, Roseanne and the children, they were all in elementary school at the time. And in fact, and Wendy, who was 5 years old at the time, was playing on the swing, and she breaks her arm. Now, that's 4:30 in the afternoon. Oh, I don't know who that was. I think it was Jack. So she comes in, and she's crying, and Roseanne, the GM, took over. Here, you do this, you clean up here, one son did this, one son did that, Coach, you do this, Paul, you do this. Bing, gone. We were cleaned up. We were on our way to the stadium. Roseanne took Wendy to the hospital. She was in her seat by 7:30 with the cast on her arm. And everything. Listen, Coach's success, and there was always somebody behind it. So thank you. As Coach transitions from coaching to retirement, I want to finish up with a special prayer that we got back in 1972. I don't know if Coach will remember this. 1972, we went to spring practice at North Carolina State University. And Lou Holtz was coaching there at the time. And Coach Cordelli, who coached at Dunmore here, his son was playing there. And I'm not sure if Dunmore still uses it. I think we did in the beginning, but we still use it at Wyoming area before every game. It's on my refrigerator. I say it before every day when I wake up because it's a great philosophy of life. And I like to just say it now, you know, pray with you with this. It's called, "This is the beginning of a new day." What will today bring? This is the beginning of a new day. God has given us this day to use as we will. We can waste it or use it for good. What we do today is important because we are exchanging a day of our life for it. When tomorrow comes, this day is gone forever. Leave it in its place, something we have traded for it. We want it to be gain, not loss, good, not evil, success, not failure, in order that we shall not regret the price we paid for it. The future is a whole string of nows. So, Coach, in your retirement, congratulations. I love you. Enjoy.
A guy dislocates his shoulder. You can stick your hand in there, and the only thing that come out of his mouth is, "I don't want to come out of the game."
Right next to the priest, I'm being honest.
I always wondered what the IQ of a football player actually was. I think I got my answer this evening. You're very good, though, Coach. There's no one more important to Coach Henzes than his family. And there's no one more important to Coach Henzes' family than Coach Henzes. And his wife in the stands, along with his daughter, Wendy. Missy used to be there, but she bailed out of this. Oh, yeah, she's a Trojan now. And Kim, his son Randy making the trip in from Delaware, his grandson's on the sideline. It could be said that Coach had the perfect job. Speaking on behalf of the Henzes family is his son, Dr. Jack Henzes. But let me say this. I'm not going to say anything derogatory towards the doctor. He is my doctor. I think I have to get my knee drained tomorrow. I'm going to be very, very careful here. But he did talk to me about hydration and how he studied it. And we went out, we spent $2,500 in Gatorade to prevent cramping. Drank it at night, drank it in the morning, drank it in the lunchtime, drank it at dinner time. We'll never get a cramp. We played Montrose that week. Montrose came down with 2 buckets of water that said Montrose on the side of it. I looked at their water, it was cloudy. We had 17 kids cramp up. Montrose had none. I wonder if I should change doctors. I now present to you Dr. Jack Henzes.
Thanks, Coach Kelly. And that story is true. But it wasn't Montrose, it was Olforge. And the word that what he said was, I can't do it how he does it with the high-pitched voice, but you know when he gets excited, he speaks with this really high-pitched voice. He started a little bit when he was yelling at you to sit down. But we were playing Olforge, and he goes through, "You're like Dr. Hydration, Dr. Hydration, Dr. Hydration. These kids from Olforge are drinking the Lackawanna River water. And none of them are cramping. So you're fired, and we're looking for a new team doctor. I'm telling the superintendent." But it was Lackawanna River water was your famous quote on the sideline. Which was sometimes more entertaining listening to Coach Kelly tell me stories on the sideline. And I kept thinking a couple times, my father would be looking down the side, and Coach Kelly would have me facing this way, the play's down this way. And he would be telling me his favorite stories, maybe from the Giant Market and what was going on in school. And I'm thinking, my dad's gonna be thinking, we're paying you to watch the game, make sure no one gets hurt. But I was really the audience for him for a good part of the game till he had to go count the money. But my role tonight is to thank the people that helped put this together for the most part. So on behalf of my mom and dad and my family, the first people I want to thank is the Dunmore High School administration. And there are past and present administrators here, and I thank them for all they've done for my dad in the classroom and on the football field. But I'm going to go back to the little bit of the story that Coach Marranca told. It's really 1970, and if my crack research staff, led by Coach Hopkins' daughter, who found this out for me, the people who we must thank the most are Mr. William Tedesco, and Mr. Tedesco was the superintendent, and the principal in 1970 was Mr. Joseph McDonald. I'm going to give them credit for offering my dad a job as a teacher and a football coach when he got fired at Wyoming area. And had they not done that, we probably wouldn't be here today. So they probably deserve as much credit for this dinner as anybody, because they started going forward in 1970. I want to thank Christine and her staff here from Fiorelli's for the fabulous food that they provided for us in this beautiful venue. The committee who put this dinner together, and I probably shouldn't mention their names because my dad kept asking me who's behind this, who's behind this, who's behind this, and I said, well, there's a lot of people behind it, but there's people behind it, but I wouldn't tell them, but I guess I'll let them know now. So the people on this committee did a great job. They put in a lot of time and effort to make this what it is today. 450 or so strong showed up tonight for this dinner. But Father Capelloni, Carmen Scrimali, Luan Gargiola, Pat Reese, Kevin McHale, and Frank and Tony Montero. Frank, as we all know, is the money man, and he was the money man throughout this. And Tony, probably who did a lot of everything for this committee, and most importantly organized the ads that you see in the booklet that we have. He and Rich Bannock did a fantastic job putting this that booklet together. Joby Fawcett did do the little biography for us, and I want to give him credit for that. He also put the records together that you see in the program. I want to thank the speakers today, Coach Kelly, which we did give you credit as being a great basketball coach, but most importantly, you were my dad's partner in the gym, and I'll never forget that for you. And as we all know, you're the greatest Toastmaster who ever lived, so thank you. Father Capelloni for saying grace, but more importantly, every game, Father Capelloni's there with the team in the locker room, and he gives us some very great spiritual words for the kids to follow. And he is just as much a part of this team for the last 12 years as anyone else. Bruce Coyer, he was one of the leaders of that first football team. And it was referenced, you know, the gut trap or the fullback trap, which is truly one of Dunmore's greatest plays. And he was the first guard to be able to do that, along with Gene DeVizio, who was mentioned earlier as well. Timmy Hopkins, one of the key players of the first Eastern Conference Championship team, as he told us, as he brags about it. But his greatest skill is in the locker room before the games. There's pep talks that the coaches give. And there's an order of how the coaches give. And usually the final speech is given by the guy who's probably the best closer. And Timmy Hopkins has that title. He is by far the best closer of any speech giver that I've heard of. Leonard Burke. Leonard Burke is probably the most versatile football player who ever played at Dunmore High School. And that's exhibited by the different number of jerseys that he had to wear. He leads all time in the number of different number on the jersey that he's ever had. But the most important thing for Leonard Burke is that he is my mother's all-time favorite football player. From the time he was that cute little water boy till the time he got on the team, it's rare that my mother would ever comment about who played in the game. But when Lenny didn't get to play, my dad had to answer to that. And why doesn't Lenny get to play more? So he's truly the all-time favorite player. Kevin McHale, leader of the first district championship team. And as we all know now, he's the new head coach of the Dunmore Bucks, and we want you to know the Henzes family is behind you 100%. Michael Perry, I think he's the first player ever started tailback for 4 years at Dunmore High School. And he's our all-time leading rusher, I believe, in Dunmore High School. And he is one of the greatest kids who's ever come through the school. And then Colin Holmes, I would say, pound for pound, one of the toughest and one of the greatest players to ever wear the Dunmore uniform. He was spectacular in his 4 years on the team. Coach Marranca, he's had many firsts. He was one of the first linemen for the Wyoming area Warriors for my dad. As he told the story, and I remembered it clearly in some downliner here, he was the first and only assistant for a period of time at Dunmore High School, both varsity and freshman. And he became the first offensive coordinator at Dunmore High School. Prior to that, my dad called all the plays and did a generally pretty good job at it. But Coach Marranca became the offensive coordinator, and lo and behold, we won a state championship. So for all the speakers, I just want to thank you today for all the great words that you passed and the stories that you gave us, and they're all true. All the stories are true. I want to thank the Friends of the Bucks. There are too many people to name, but the Friends of the Bucks are people who gave of their time and their effort to raise money for the players of this team. They've done it for over 40 years. The job they do is fantastic. And unfortunately, some of them are not with us today, but everyone who's ever been part of it should be thanked. I want to thank all the past and present assistant coaches. Some are here today. And most recently, the staff that he's had has probably been the staff that has stayed with him the longest. Some of those coaches, anywhere from 10 to 20 years, have been with him. He's had a fantastic staff, one that's allowed him to do a lot of administrative stuff while people took care of the offense, people took care of the defense, someone took care of the special teams. And Kevin is fortunate that he's got those people with him, and he will develop this next staff, and hopefully they all stay together over the next 20 years as well. I'd like to thank the many athletic directors who have also helped make the football team run very efficiently. Coach Kelly. And then there are other people that make the machine run smoothly. I saw this when I played at Valley View, and I saw it what happens at Dunmore. There's athletic trainers, there's team doctors, there's the weight training staff, there's managers, there's statisticians, the film crew, game day personnel, the custodians of the field and the field house, and the equipment men. Everyone has their role in making the team run smoothly, and there are a lot of people at Dunmore that do that. There are 3 people that I want to mention that have worked behind the scenes for many, many years. Unfortunately, 2 of them are not with us anymore, but I feel their effort deserves to be mentioned, and that would be Mr. Michael DeSano and Mr. Joseph DePietro. Along with Frank Montero, they have done all these little things that you generally don't see during the game. But during the week, they're getting uniforms ready, they're fixing equipment, they're making life easier for the coaches so they don't have to worry about the little things that go on. And without them, life would be a lot tougher. They definitely make the job run more efficiently for my dad and now for Coach McHale. But the last people I want to thank is the people that are sitting here. It's you, the Dunmore football community. They've been very supportive of the team and my dad since 1971. It is evident by the people wishing my dad good luck on the street on a daily basis. You see with signs their houses are decorated. You see the bleachers being filled on Friday nights. And when we make the playoffs, you see the caravan of cars and buses that go to the away playoff games. Dunmore fans always outnumber the visiting team or the other team that we're playing in the playoffs. Their support has just been great over the many years. And there's been some great stories today, and I had a story to tell, but I'm not going to tell it because I think it was, someone already mentioned it. But it really comes down to how my dad treated people, and he treated people fairly. And I think that's how I'm going to remember it. So thank you again for coming tonight, and I hope everyone had a great time. It's not the end of the program though, Coach. There's one more speaker to go. So.